Two guys not related, yet somehow are given the same name. It's time for the Two Daves podcast, where we'll answer the age-old question, are two Daves better than one? And now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome back to another Two Daves episode where the FDA just approved our podcast as a healthy and natural drug that increases sleep and causes rapid eye movement. Hey, I'm Dave.
And I'm the other Dave, and this ain't tacos. Hey, Dave.
Yes.
We're going to ask our viewers to be a part of an I'm Listening survey that we've just started.
Okay.
So everybody, if you would either comment on your YouTube or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, or you can go to the 2 Days podcast Facebook page or Instagram and leave a comment that says, I'm listening. That's all you have to say. Just I'm listening. And thank you in advance for being a part of the 2 Days Nation.
Awesome. We appreciate if you do that for us. Every so often, it's nice to know if we can go beyond our 4 or 5 listeners. So
that's right.
We're going to do. Hey, Dave, it's time for the 2 Daves fact of the day. Today, it's sponsored by, don't you love all of our sponsors?
Yeah, I do. That's great.
I know.
Yeah.
Today, it's sponsored. The 2 Days fact is sponsored by Beulah's secondhand store on the corner of 1st and Looney Street, across from Jake's Big and Tasty Cafe and Lawn Care Services. That's right. That's Beulah's secondhand store. Well, you'll leave saying to yourself, I know where I'm doing this year's Christmas shopping.
Yeah, that's right. And here is the 2 Daves fact of the day. To make your life a little better, it really needs to become a little bit better after listening to that little commercial. But here it is. Every time you bash your head on a wall, you burn off 150 calories.
Ooh, man, you look like you've lost some weight this past week, Dave.
Man, I've banged my head against the wall a few times this week.
I bet you those headbangers, no wonder from the singers from the 80s, they no wonder they stayed skinny, you know?
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, by the way, this is the last episode in our first season. Isn't that exciting?
Episode 30.
That's right.
Well, let's wait for the crowd to just applause.
Yeah. Oh, wait, sorry, that was static.
Chirp, chirp. Okay, whatever. All right, hey.
We're really glad that you've listened to us this season.
Yeah.
And go back and listen to your favorite episodes. We're planning on a second season being even better than this
one. Well, anything's going to be better than the first season.
I knew that was coming.
Okay, hey, David, I know you have a pet or two. Do you just have one pet now or two?
Yeah, we have a cat. Yep.
Okay. And it's called Beulah, right? Or what's the cat's name called?
Onyx.
Onyx. Okay. Yeah, Onyx. And I have a couple, toy poodles myself.
Yeah.
And I thought before we brought on our guest to talk about some history stuff tonight, we would talk about some very weird and creepy things about stuffing your animals.
Yeah, we found through our research team an article about pet owners, and it's called Grieving Pet Owners Can Opt for Stuffing or Freeze Drying Deceased Pets.
Yum. It's not a joke, friends. It's not a joke. Some pet owners opt for preserving their pets to have them around forever. Now, Dave, I just got to ask you, is that weird or creepy to you?
Yeah, it is. It is. I've heard of it. I know that there are people, I don't want to offend people, but because I know that there are probably some who would do that. But would you have Puddles or Sammy stuffed?
Every time I've mentioned that to my wife threatens me that she will kick me out of the house. So I don't know. No, I see it being weird. And then some of it, I don't know. Let's talk about it some more because maybe I'll have some sense knocked into me and lose 150 calories. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this article written by Ryan Owens and Chris Murphy starts out by saying Mary Kaufman of Lone Oak, Arkansas, still sleeps near her beloved Yorkshire Terrier Brittany even though the dog is long dead. I'm
That's
already creeped out.
I'm creeped out there too.
Yeah. He says after Brittany died last year at age 14, Kaufman, 64, bypassed the pet cemetery and backyard burial to have the little dog stuffed and freeze dried.
Mm.
Kaufman said being able to still look at and touch the deceased pet made her feel like Brittany, her loyal companion, was still with her. Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, Dave, have you ever seen the movie Pet Cemetery?
I have. I've read the book and I've seen the movie.
Oh, that's what's his
Stephen King.
name? Yeah, Stephen King. So that's about trying to bring your pet back to life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they bring a little boy back to life too, isn't that right?
Yeah,
or something?
The pets that come back and the people that come back to life are actually, they're not really coming back to life. They're just the corpses that basically have some sort of a, spirit in them, and it's not their spirit. It's weird. It really is.
No, well, sounds like we're going to be talking about that later on, maybe for next season, huh?
Yeah, but no, my pet, my cat loves for me to pet her, but there's a difference between petting a cat that responds and petting an inanimate object. So
that's true.
Anyway, let me keep reading.
Okay.
Brittany represents a lot to me, Kaufman said. I lost a husband and I lost a son, and I had Brittany during that time. When we lose a family member, we don't just forget about them and just move on. They're still a part of our lives. That doesn't mean I have to let go of the past.
Well, okay. First of all, I don't think people stuff their loved ones after they're gone, but I could be wrong.
I mean, I've never heard of it.
Do you remember we talked about how some family traditions, they bring cardboard pictures of life-size cardboard pictures of their family to the holidays?
Yeah.
I mean, that's creepy enough right there, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so let's talk about this though. Is it valid what Mary's saying here? She doesn't have to let go of her pet in one way. Is there a difference? So much so that stuffing pets doesn't have to be weird or creepy.
Well, it's interesting. I just saw here in the last couple of days a documentary, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's actually an old documentary now, made back in 1963, but it's called Mondo Cane. It's weird. It's a weird. I'm not even recommending it, but there's a segment in there that talks about pet cemetery, and you view some mourners who are going to visit the pet cemetery, and specifically, I'm thinking of this one lady who she kneels down at the grave of her, I don't know, dog or cat or snake, whatever it is, I don't know. But she's talking to I think there's probably a picture up on the tombstone. She's talking to the picture and she's patting the ground where the little coffin is or something like that. And I'm just, as an audience member, I'm responding the way the documentarians want me to respond. And that's going, that's weird. Because, you even when you have your pet stuffed, haven't you still lost the companionship? I mean, you can't, every pet has a personality, right? Your dogs have a personality.
Yes.
Well, when they die, they lose that personality, obviously. If they're stuffed sitting on your mantle, you still have lost their companionship. I don't know.
I know. In fact, I have my little doggie tonight, Pudsey, underneath the table here, sleeping in her bed. So she's with me. She's alive. Yes.
Okay. All right.
She's alive. And Dave, we both know that there are a lot of people, and it's going to be hard on me when I lose my dogs, so there is a bond there.
Oh yeah. It's very hard. I'm not doubting that at all. As a matter of fact, we had decided, my wife and I had decided that we were done with pets. Our kids left the house. It was just the two of us. We know that they're a lot of work, and we just didn't want to be tied down to pets. Plus the heartache when they go, when they die. But my wife rescued this cat back in February, and we love her. She's already part of the family. So,
well, and I'd like to correct you. There's just not you two. I mean, you got that dummy with you, so
That's
there's really
true.
3 of you.
That's true.
So
Yeah, we try not to bring him up though.
yeah, it has a personality, right?
Sore subject. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, anyway, this article then states pets are a huge industry in the United States, and I believe that. The
Yeah.
American Pet Products Association estimates that Americans will spend almost $75 billion on their pets this year. Dave, I said billion, not million. The
Wow.
National Pet Owner Survey says roughly 62% of U.S. households own a pet, which equates to 72.9 million homes.
That's a lot of fur.
That's a lot of fur, yeah.
Well, okay, so $53 billion spent by Americans on pets. That really doesn't surprise me in a way. I mean, does it you?
No, well, it should. Yes, it does.
Well, it's more than that, isn't it?
It's 75.
It's 75 billion.
75 billion.
Well, I don't know where I got 53 billion at. Anyway,
you weren't listening, evidently.
No, I guess I wasn't. But I looked up 5 major categories of, not housing and all that kind of stuff, but other
Leisure.
On how Americans also spend their money. And here's the breakdown. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Tell me if these surprise you or not.
Okay.
So it comes out to people spend $890 per pet each year.
A lot of money.
They spend $3,400 a year going out to eat.
I can believe that, and that's sad.
Yeah. They spend $600, and this is just probably your average, $600 a year on alcohol.
Well, I don't contribute to that at all.
I don't either, but I know that there's some next door. We have a pub right next to us in our church office right now, a temporary church office uptown. There's people I see there every day. It's got to be more than $600.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then I can believe this. People spend $750 a year on coffee drinks.
Yeah, I can believe that too. And again, I contribute a little bit, but not much.
I don't get coffee. Do you go to Starbucks?
No. First of all, Dave, where do I live?
Yeah, but you go to Hayes ever so often, right?
Yeah, no, I don't do Starbucks. Even if I lived next door to a Starbucks, I wouldn't go.
Okay. Well, there's other ways of spending money on coffee, like through all the, the Keurig stuff and all that.
Well,
but
like when I go pick up a can of Folgers at the store, that's spending money on coffee.
Yeah. It is. And then they say the average is $7,000 a year on vacations or getaways. I thought that was awful high, but that's what they said. So I don't know.
Anyway, back to the article. Daniel Ross, he's 35. He's a professional taxidermist who preserved Brittany. He's the owner of Extreme Taxidermy. It's a growing business he runs out of a shed in the front yard of his home of, in all places, Romance, Arkansas. He says, if you raise something for 15, 20 years, it's not just simply a pet anymore. It's part of the family. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Some people think it's weird, but I can tell you that for all the customers that I've had, and I've seen the joy and happiness, the peace that it brings back to their life, to have their beloved cat or dog or whatever back, it's worth
it. Well, yeah. I guess to each their own, right?
I guess so. I don't want to judge or criticize.
No.
I just really couldn't do it.
Yeah. It goes on to say in his office, Ross has freeze dryers packed with pets from across the country. It cost about $500 to $700 to have an average sized dog stuffed with cotton and freeze dried.
Wow.
The process takes months, and people don't just send their cats and dogs. Ross has received a prized rooster, a hairless rat, among other odd requests.
Do you remember when Kyle on Last Man Standing had Ed Elzate's dog stuff?
Yes. Yes, that's funny.
Yeah.
That was funny.
So anyway, Ross said that one Texas woman paid a few $100s to have him pose her deceased spider monkey with an empty can of her late husband's favorite beer glued to its hand. She then wanted her husband's ashes poured into the empty can.
Uh, well, such unique requests garnered Ross and his business their own reality TV show. Can you believe that? It was on the Animal Planet called American Stuffers.
Did you ever see it?
No.
No.
With each episode ending with a pet owner reuniting with his or her dearly departed loved one.
Oh boy.
But Ross said he didn't get into the pet preservation business to make money. He says, I'm a professional. I'm not some backwoods taxidermist. He says it's an odd way to make a living. And trust me, I never would have thought that I'd be working on somebody's beloved pet and being on TV or anything like that.
Yeah. The last part of the article, Ross adds this statement: a lot of people do choose to bury their animals or have them cremated if that's what they choose. And I think that's fine, but I don't think that anybody should criticize anybody for what you do with your pet. And I would agree with that. It's, we're having some fun with it, but it's not really criticism. It's just going, I wouldn't want to do that.
Right. I totally agree. So after you've heard that article, Dave, what do you think? Would you stuff your pet or
no?
Not, it's not changed your mind.
No, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Well, I doubt if it happens in my household too, but you never know. You never know.
Hey, listen, tonight we're going to bring on Jeff Martin. He's a high school history and government teacher.
Hey, speaking of pets.
Yeah. You got 3 stupid dogs that'll bark a lot.
Well, you can stuff them. You can stuff them when they're dead. So
he's a high school.
Some days I wish they were.
Jeff is a high school history and government teacher at a local high school in Iowa, Mediapolis, Iowa, which, by the way, Jeff, that's where my dad was born many years ago. But he's here to talk about history and maybe more. So, especially the surge to rewrite or erase history. It's a big deal. Somebody once said that it's illogical to wrench historical figures out of their context and expect them to have had modern views on such issues. Moreover, people today should not be held accountable for the actions or transgressions of previous generations. In the words of the Pulitzer Prize-winning eminent U.S. historian and author Barbara Tuchman, wrote, one of the worst things that we moderns can do to assess and judge the happenings of the past by the thoughts and morals of the present.
Hey, welcome, Jeff, to the Two Daves podcast. What do you think of this push, this surge to rewrite history and to just kind of, erase the historical figures from the past?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Number two, I agree with what the quote was. We can't judge people based on today's moralities and today's standards. I think it does a disservice to everybody if we take anybody out of history, because that's just part of it. It might be ugly because parts of history in America are ugly. I've always tell our kids, I think America wears the white hat most of the time, but not always. There are some times where we did things as a government and as a country that were not good. And we need to talk about those as well. But to erase anything that is pertinent is just a futile attempt to me to try and get your point across and squelch another person's opinion.
Yeah. Well, many of you will not know this, but Jeff is my first cousin, and he's way smarter than me. I can tell you that.
I know about that.
We all know that, Dave.
Yes, he is. That. But we thought it'd be a great night of conversation. I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he's been a history teacher. Jeff, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to our Two Daves podcast audience, if you would?
Sure. I've lived my life basically in southeast Iowa or in eastern Iowa. I was from Columbus Junction. I'm born in Perry, but we moved to Columbus when I was 3. My parents were both teachers. In fact, I replaced my dad when he retired in 2004. And my mom taught until 2010. And my sister and my brother-in-law were there for a while. It's kind of like the mafia. In fact, 2016, when I moved, was the first time that there wasn't a Martin teaching or somewhere in the school district at Columbus since 1973.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I grew up there. I went to school at Simpson, played a little college football, and then I've coached football since 1993, track since '93. Right now I'm the head softball coach as well, still coaching football and track as well. And but I've been teaching as a full-time teacher with a real job since 1995, and I've taught U.S. history, world history, Iowa history. I've created my own Black history unit. I even had I created my favorite class ever. It was my sports history unit, which I made into kind of like an ethics class through sports. It was awesome. Loved teaching that one. But I've done pretty much everything you can in the history field or the social studies field except for sociology and soc. And psych. I never got any of those endorsements. But that's kind of who I am. I spent a year when I started teaching. First 2 years were subbing. I spent a year teaching in Vandalia, Missouri, 4 in Ottumwa, 4 in Bellevue, 12 in Columbus, and here in Minneapolis. This will be my 6th year starting in Minneapolis.
Wow. Okay.
And I can chew gum and walk at the same time. So I told you.
Somewhere there's a disconnect here in the cousins, but anyway.
There is. I got the trains and he got the brains. So
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, Jeff,
thanks for
coming
on.
I don't know who originally said this. I've seen it attributed to anybody from Benjamin Franklin to Albert Einstein, but we've heard it said many times that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Do you agree with those statements? And if so, is there a danger in what's going on today with people wanting to rewrite the past?
Yeah, I agree with some of those statements. I'm not so sure that history repeats itself, but I think what happens is it's cyclical to me, where people have the same ideas and they bring them back. Anytime, what I find most what do I want to say here, most disturbing, as a history teacher, communism's bad. Folks, communism is bad. And to hear that people in America today have thought that's something we should do is just beyond me. So that I don't understand how that happened. I don't understand where we're getting that.
I don't think they understand.
When we're looking at how things take over, that worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
What about, people are forgetting the importance of the past as well. And I mean, I think some of the bad things that's happened in the past are important to remember as well,
Yeah. When we have the issues we have today with African Americans in the United States, that didn't happen overnight. 2016, Colin Kaepernick didn't decide, I'm going to take a knee. No, this stuff has been going on for a long time. And what we as a nation have to realize that, in the past, we have not given a lot of minority groups a break when we should have. And that's something we have to learn about. What bothers me is the fact that you can't paint everybody with one brush, that we all are like that. And I think that's what's happening with some of the social justice movements today, as they're interpreting history a little different than maybe I would. But once again, that's not my experience. It's a different person's experience. So history is your own experience most of the time.
I don't know if all history teachers are like you today.
Well, it's all full disclosure. I'm a fairly conservative person. I'm a little different than most conservatives. I am socially conservative, fiscally liberal, which means if they want to use my money to help as many people, I don't care. Like for tax programs, but social issues, I'm pretty conservative person. But I would like to help out as many people as I can. If they use some of my money to do that, I'm 100% okay with that. And as in my position, it's sometimes it's interesting to hear the different points of view, and especially this year with the new legislation that's being passed by our Republican Congress here in Iowa, where we have to now every high school has to do the Pledge of Allegiance, which I agree with. That's fine. But I know where that's coming from. I know it's coming from a push to get back to more traditional values from that particular group.
Today, as a history teacher, you're looking back years. I mean, you're looking back decades, you're looking back centuries, you're going way back. Today we have 2020 hindsight on all that. And it's go ahead. No, well, I'm just go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. And people think you can't for example, the president, I think the best president I think we've ever had is George Washington, and that is because he created the office. All the things he did everything that happened after him was basically a copy of that guy. So he creates an office. He's the only person in America who could have been a king. Yeah, could have been king of America, because after the revolution, the Continental Congress had not paid the officers. Officer Corps comes up to him and says, "We want to go in and take over, and you should take over and be the king." He says, "No, we're not going to do that. That's not what we fought for." So that's a great thing. But today, what do we think about George Washington? Oh, he owned slaves. He did this. Well, yeah, he did, and that's a bad thing. But that was a different time where people are now saying you can't own slaves. Well, yeah, in 2021, that's not what you do. Right. But at that particular time in history, he actually was fairly moderate in what he did as far as owning slaves, freeing them, not only freedom on his death, like Jefferson did, but that's just what it is.
Yeah. But it's interesting. My ears pricked up there when you talked about your favorite president. Between the two Daves, I'm definitely the presidential history buff, and your favorite president is Washington. My favorite ones, I can't really narrow it down to one. Definitely Lincoln and Reagan and Truman and Polk. Any other favorite presidents that you have?
Well, actually, I think he's the best. My favorite, though, is Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anybody who gets shot in the chest and keeps delivering the speech, that's my guy.
Yeah, no kidding. Nah.
And who gets a black eye and a boxing match on the White House lawn. I like that guy.
Yeah, that's good. What about your favorite vice president? Mine is Dan Quayle.
I don't know, but probably my favorite vice president will be Truman, because when he became president, he had no idea there was the atomic bomb and had to make that choice right now. And there's another instance. We have today so many people in America who are saying we should not have dropped the bomb and this is terrible. We killed. Yeah, it was terrible. It's a terrible weapon. But as an historian, I look at it and go, you know what? In 1945, I don't care if we drop a bomb on Japan. Get this war over. No more Americans die. No more Japanese die. Yeah. And so when he as a vice president, he comes in not knowing anything, and then he does that. I like Truman. Actually, my presidents for Roosevelt, Washington, Truman. Those guys are awesome.
Yeah, great. Well, what about who do you think the worst presidents in history are?
The worst ones. Well, you got to go back where the guy only was there for about 40 days. I can't remember his name. Who died?
40 days. Harrison.
Harding probably was the worst. Back in the 20s, he was the most corrupt, and he basically hired all his buddies to do all his cabinet, and it was awful. I actually use this. We talked about Harding. I use Urban Meyer hiring, and I know this didn't age well, but this was back in 2013 when he was in. Tom Herman was the OC at Iowa State, and they beat Oklahoma State in 2011. He hired him sight unseen. Had never met him before in his life. He hired him based on how good he was, not because he was a buddy. And that's what Harding did. Harding hired all his buddies.
Yeah.
And they were terrible. And so that, to me, my least favorite president, though, probably was Woodrow Wilson.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Woodrow Wilson came in as a progressive. I'm going to be a champion for the black man. The first thing he did was segregate the Washington, D.C. Staff, which hadn't been segregated since the Civil War. And he was the first movie ever shown in the White House was Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
which was a KKK interpretation of Reconstruction. And him and I can't remember who the Supreme Court Chief Justice at the time, they watched it. And the quote was, it was like watching history with lightning. And the sad part, it's so true. If you ever seen that movie, it's a propaganda Klan piece of trash that is, for the time, it was a good movie as far as the cinematography and things like that. But it's just a KKK propaganda piece. And that guy is supposed to be helping the Black Americans, is having his White House. So that's, to me, that's a hypocritical move, and I never liked that guy.
Oh, okay. So let me ask something here. What can we learn? I mean, aren't we supposed to learn from history? Isn't that part of the reason why we teach history, is to learn? Why are we not learning some of these things today?
I think in general, and yet I'm starting to become the guy, the get off your front lawn guy, because I'm counting the days till I can retire in about 6 or 7 years now. With all these new things we have to do, I'm getting closer to it every day. But I think so much of what we've taught in the past, now they are just, we don't need to talk about that much, because they can just Google that, which I disagree with wholeheartedly. I get in trouble sometimes over that. But, I think the big thing is kids, they don't watch as much stuff as or don't listen as much as they used to, or don't watch. Like, for example, I'm a football coach. I'm a football guy. When there's a football game on, I'm watching all of it from start to finish. My son, 3-year varsity starter, never watched a game start to finish, watch the highlights. That's all he did. So I think we're looking for highlights in history now. And instead of knowing what really, now I always teach. I don't do dates very much. A couple you have to know, but not very many. But I like more cause and effect type stuff. And that's what I think history should be. And I think what's happening is there's so many things open to interpretation, and so many people, and I do believe that in some of our universities there is such a different slant than what I have, that it is way different than the history I teach. The girl across the hall from me, who's 24, 25, is a good teacher. She has a way different slant. We go around and around about the Hiroshima bombing. I'm all for it. And she's like, well, we shouldn't have done it. And I'm like, I haven't, old Truman said it best when he says, I'd apologize, but I haven't gotten, I'm sorry for Pearl Harbor yet.
Wow, that's true, man. That's true. We kind of wish that you would kind of really tell us what you think and what you feel tonight. So that's good. CRT, which, I know, it's about critical race theory. That's kind of being shoved down or something. Can you kind of tell us?
In the public schools, in the Iowa public high schools, we don't do that. You're seeing a lot of propaganda from the Republican. I'm a conservative. I'm not in the Republican Party, because I don't really like either party. I'm more libertarian. I'm just a conservative dude. And when I look at this, I think the Republican Party is using that as a talking point to gain votes. I really do, because we don't really do that in the public school setting. Now, some of the universities, they might, and I can't speak for that because I'm not there. But I know, for example, let's just if you talk to civil rights area, I'm going to give both sides, and I'm going to talk and say, listen, this is, this was bad. This is why it happened. Or if we go up to in the 90s, we talk about the O.J. Simpson case. Why was he acquitted? 2 reasons. 1, he had money, and 2, they didn't want to have, the jury wanted revenge for the Rodney King thing. That's a true story. So we talk about things like that. And I don't think there's let me back up. I think that there's a disconnect between what happens today when there are police involved in shootings and things like that, as compared to what it was in the 60s, or before that. If you look at the 60s, and this gets a very controversial theory, and I don't really want to say a lot of things. I still got 7 years left, but but here's my major idea as I think about this, was the fact that the guys that were getting hurt in the 60s weren't doing things that were illegal. They were
Hmm.
trying to get rights to vote. Today, no matter what side you're on, if you look at some of the high profile cases where there's been police involvement, police shootings, a lot of it is resistance. And I understand, because when I taught at Columbus, we had some black students because we had a Tyson plant in town. So these kids, and a couple of them, one of them, there was one kid, Devon, who was on my relay team, high jump 6'4", one of my favorite kids of all time. He looked like that center from Iowa State with the dreads a few years ago in basketball.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, how'd you guys, when you lived in Chicago, deal with the police? And he just said, we stayed away from them because we knew that it was probably to our best interest to stay away, which is a way different perspective than what I have. And then I had another girl from Chicago, and I asked her, and she was your stereotypical, I hate to say it, but your stereotypical person who's from the ghetto. And she's like, well, we wanted to go fight the cops. I'm like, whoa. Because I grew up, the cops were my friend. They grew up, hey, we got to watch them. So it's a different perspective in history. And I understand that's what we have to get rid of is, I don't know how you do that. Well, I do know how you do that. It's Jesus Christ that does that, but that's hard to get to when not everybody has that belief. But that's what I try to do. I try to help as many key people as I can. And I could care less. You know me. I could care less what color skin you are. Care less who you are. As long as you treat me well, we're going to get along fine.
Yeah. I think the political system fuels all this. And like you were saying, so not only do you teach history, Jeff, but you teach government, which, I mean, there's history in that as well. I haven't
taught government for a while, but I have.
Okay, so what is taught in government class today in our public schools? And even though you haven't done it for a while, what's being taught there?
Well, you're allowed to teach whatever you think you want and that sort of thing. What I did, I taught what I thought was important for the kids. I taught the Bill of Rights, because I taught how to know, because I wanted to know if they got arrested, what their rights were. Okay. I taught how to vote, and I taught political bias one way or the other. And I didn't teach any of the history of how it started, because we do that in U.S. history. So that's kind of what I did. I can't speak for a lot of other history teachers or government teachers, because I'm a little different than most teachers. When I go to school, I go to my room and the door shuts, and I go to lunch, and I go to football practice, and I go home. I don't go to the lounge. I don't do any gossiping about what we're doing down the hallway. I don't care. But there are a lot of teachers do, and they want to know. And I understand some of that. We're bouncing ideas off each other. But I'm old enough, like I said, I'm getting to the point where I'm the get off my lawn guy. And that is kind of how I taught government. And I love teaching government. You know, it was kind of funny, because my dad, he taught government, and he was like, when he taught history, he was a history teacher, or a government teacher teaching history. And I was a history teacher teaching government. And I did it because I'm more of a history guy. He was more of a government guy. So it's too bad. If Dad was here, which I know my dad, Dave's uncle, passed a year ago in March, and he'd be the guy you really want, because he was real smart.
Yeah.
I would talk to him a lot, Jeff, because he'd have to set me straight on some stuff. He knew his stuff. I mean, your dad was smart when it came to that.
Dad liked to fool people, because when he was growing up, he never tried. My uncle and our grandpa, they didn't care about education that much.
Right.
And Dad got a 13 on his ACT because he was sick, and just played dot to dot. But if he really tried, I know he done real, because my dad was real smart.
Yes, he was.
You know, it's obvious today, especially, I mean, when you just listen to even certain members of the United States Congress speak, that more and more Americans don't understand the Constitution, or not even aware that there's the Constitution, or couldn't care less about it.
Right.
For example, the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So the First Amendment gives everybody living in the United States the right to hear all sides of every issue and to make their own judgments about those issues without government interference or limitation. What's your take on the First Amendment?
I always tell kids the First Amendment protects unpopular speech. I always give this example. Could the KKK come down into the downtown and say all black people are stupid and we must be killed? Sure. If you want to say that, I'm going back up. I say all black people must leave and aren't deserving of our rights. You can say that. You're an idiot, but you can say it. Free speech protects that. Now, what they can't say is obviously they're going to hurt them or something like that. But that's what I used to say. And when I taught government was it protects unpopular speech. And I think what's happening here is the social media sites are deciding what they want to have on and what not have on. And that's an issue because they're private, they can decide that. And is Facebook or Twitter or something, is that a private or a public venue? We don't know because it is a private venue, so they can put on who they want and decide what's right and wrong. The problem is people don't understand that it's a private venue. They think it's public. They think the government's doing. The government's not doing that. And now you could make the connection that they're doing it through a third person with the media moguls and the people who are part of it. So, yeah, I don't like the way our place is headed, where everything is Wikipedia, everything is what you hear on Twitter or Facebook, and that's not necessarily true. And the only thing I really use Facebook is to advertise my football helmets I make, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So, social media has a lot to do with censorship.
Yeah.
And it's really the fuel that drives our cancel culture. I know plus hate and a lack of respect for one another, and you can go on from there. But my question is, with everything that's going on, how come we're not hearing more from the Supreme Court about protecting the Constitution or upholding the Constitution, or are we?
I think the biggest thing that you understand how the Supreme Court works. You've got to have cases that go through the federal and district courts first, and that takes a while. It's going to take, if by the time you get to, like, for example, if you go back to Roe versus Wade, by the time that case was heard, she'd already had the baby like 3 years after that. So it takes a while to go from, the Supreme Court's the thing of last resort. So if it's going to take 3 or 4 years for that to filter up to the Supreme Court. So we ever get a case like that, it's going to be a couple of years down the road because it's just now come into what people are thinking about, I believe, the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, you see the stuff that's going on, especially through, it just seems like we don't trust our government. And I think you're saying the social media is helping that, but I mean, I also see some political heads that are also feeding into that well. Dave and I talked about conspiracy theories, stupid conspiracy theories, but I think one of the things that is driving that is a lack of trust for our government.
Yeah, I think I think the lack of trust ever since you had the Kennedy assassination, and people perpetuate the idea that there was a second shooter and that sort of thing. And then 20 years after that, or after the fact or so, you get Oliver Stone basically making a movie that was totally fiction and people pass it off as fact.
Yeah.
So you get like that, you get those things. And so people automatically think that it has to be a conspiracy, where, there is no way that, like, for example, George W. Bush knew that the Twin Towers were going to get knocked down, and I find that ridiculous when they can't keep a secret about anything else. You're going to keep a secret about that for 20 years? No.
Right.
And that's the thing is, the conspiracy theories, they sometimes become part of what we believe is true. Everybody say, "Oh, the grass, no, man, that guy's a nut. That's what he's doing."
Yeah.
So
But we're
know,
gonna get a
it's
little.
just a whole part of culture.
You
Let's
know,
get a little tougher on him now,
Yeah.
Dave. Okay, let's ask some more deeper questions here if we can.
current events. If we live long enough, current events will be the things that our history teachers will be talking about in the years to come. So let's talk about 2020, the elections in 2020. We had a lot going on with government officials breaking rules, using COVID as their rationale. And you know that right now, the trust level in our elections in the US have hit an all-time low.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the election process? You know that the election of 2020 is going to be taught about in history. What's your feelings there?
I like status quo with one exception. I would say the only, and my dad and I talked about this. I like the electoral college and I think it should be possibly more, not necessarily a winner take all. Make it if you want to make it a little bit more fair. If you win by 80%, you get 80%, like they do in a parliamentary system. So that's the only thing I would say, because the electoral college works, and I like the way that works. But if you are talking about 3 or 4 states basically controlling the United States, that's a problem.
Yeah,
and I think with that you could possibly alleviate some of that.
Jeff, it looks like you're getting a storm down there. Is that right?
Yeah, we are.
You're getting what we had.
Yeah, we was good too, because we have a field turf field. It was about 110 on the field tonight.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the heat just comes up out of that rubber.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me give you another one here. The Secretary of Homeland Security has issued a new national terrorism advisory system called the NTAS bulletin regarding the current heightened threat environment across the United States. Now, just to name a few of those threats are the following. And it's those who believe in this or act upon this. There's many of them. I'm just naming a few, okay? So one is those that believe in conspiracy theories on perceived election fraud and alleged reinstatement, and responses to anticipated restrictions relating to the increasing COVID cases. So this current administration says that you are a conspiracy theorist if you believe the election had fraudulent practices, or if you disagree with the way our administration is handling the restrictions of COVID. Can you kind of talk through that with us on what are they? What do you make of that?
I think, okay, you have to remember what we're trying to get here as far as the two parties. It's a competition. It's winner take all. The Democrats, because they're in power right now, are trying to eliminate the Republicans. How do you do that? You take their theories, and okay, I'm going to talk about Trump a little bit. I was never a big Trump guy. I voted for that guy twice because I didn't like the other guy. And I was not a huge Trump guy, but I didn't like the other people at all. Now, yeah, Trump did some terrible things in his social life, and it was bad. But I have never seen somebody who can never do anything right in the eyes of the media, and to me, that's carried on. And now, as I look at it, the media is complicit, I think, with the Democratic Party in trying to win for the Democratic Party, which I understand, because Fox News does the same thing for the Republican Party. So
somewhat.
That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Have you seen in your lifetime, you're about our age, have you seen in your lifetime such complicity in the media before?
No. But I will say this, I never looked either before.
Wow.
I never looked. I mean, to be honest, I was not political at all until I was about 30 years old. And
really?
I remember, kind of funny, because my mom, bless her heart, is fairly liberal minded. Now, she's more conservative than she lets on. She hated Donald Trump, but she's pretty much conservative, but she's got a liberal tint. And I remember I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh all the time when I was that age. And I found, until he used to say things like, all drug users must go to jail. Then he got caught, and then all of a sudden he stopped saying that. So I stopped listening to him because he's not going to be a hypocrite, and I'm not going to listen to him. But Rush was entertainment, and I just thought everybody listened to Rush. And I remember driving to Dubuque once when we lived in Bellevue, and Mom and Dad were in the car, and I turned TV on, and my mom flipped out. "You turn him off. He's racist." I'm like, "It's Rush." Rush was just a guy who's not racist. He just didn't like liberals. But I think that sort of stuff, us against them, has always been there. It's just magnified now because everybody can have an opinion. And you can look on Twitter. I used to do this too when I would teach, and I still do it when I teach things on race, the way certain news stations carry things, like CNN compared to Fox and NBC. I'll never forget the Ferguson riots, where MSNBC was showing all the cops firing tear gas, and it looked so terrible. And you turn to Fox, and they're covering the looters. I'll never forget that, where some lady had 3 bottles of hard liquor. The guy said, "Hey, can we talk to you?" And she took off running. And so to me, I think the media's always been kind of complicit. You can go back to Vietnam and say, Walter Cronkite pretty much screwed the Vietnam War effort by what he said that night about how this is an unwinnable war, basically. Mm-hmm. Now he honored the soldiers and the military that were there, but that was the social justice type thing at that particular time. Yeah. So I think it's always been there. We just notice it more now.
Dark periods in American history: the Civil War, the Great Depression, the Vietnam era, and I would include that kind of the 60s.
Oh yeah, hippies destroyed America, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the assassinations that took place in the 60s, with the killings of both Kennedys and Martin Luther King and so on and so forth. Do you think that today everything that's going on today, I mean, everything with COVID, with the divided nation, do you think that this is going to go down in history as one of our darkest times?
See, to me, I don't even think about that right now, because here's why. You know what I was thinking about all last year? We better be able to play a football game, because my son's a senior. Yeah. I'm not having him missing a game because we got some idiot who got COVID and he's sitting by him in class. That was my focus all last year. So, that's something I really haven't thought about much. I think that depends on who writes the books and who sits down and says this is going to be history. Because if it's somebody who has a liberal tint to it, it'll be like that. Last spring, Bryce made the Drake relays, and all I cared about is I want to go watch him throw. That's all I cared about. And we were lucky enough that we got tickets and I was able to go. Our coaches were able to go, and my wife and my daughter were able to go, and they were outside the fence but watched Bryce throw the entire time. So to be honest, I was more thinking as a dad more than anything, and a coach at this. And to be honest, that's what I always think of anyway. If I couldn't coach football, I probably wouldn't have taught. But don't get me wrong, I love teaching history, but I love football more.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, I'm surprising Dave and you, Jeff, with a little friendly history competition, because Dave is a self-proclaimed history person on the Two Daves podcast. Uh-oh. But now I've got some good competition for him you. So I'm going to be asking some questions, and if you don't have it, if you don't know it, if you get it right, you get 2 points. If you don't know it, the other person can steal for 1 point. Okay? Are you ready for this?
No, I'm not ready.
Please, Jeff, annihilate Dave for me, would you please?
We'll see. I'm still in football mode, so I'm still thinking about plays.
Okay. Who wants to start first?
You can go ahead.
You go, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff. How many years did the 100-year war last?
How many years did the 100-Year War
And I'm
last?
going to give you I'll give you within 3 years for that.
Within 3. It was, I think, about 125.
You're close. You're close. Dave, do you know?
No, I don't.
Okay. It was 116.
You were close, Jeff.
I can't hear you, Dave.
I said you were close, Jeff.
There
Yeah,
you
it
go.
went on. It was. I teach about that in world history because the Battle of Agincourt is one of my favorite battles because it was highlighted in Henry V in Shakespeare with Henry V's Crispin's Day speech, and I love that. I used to be able to spout that one verbatim.
I'm giving Jeff a point just for that knowledge right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go, Dave. Are you ready?
No.
Oh, here we go. In which year did Hitler commit suicide?
1945.
What'd you say, Jeff?
Yep, 45 is correct.
You are correct. Give you 2 points. Okay, here we go. Jeff, in what year was John F. Kennedy assassinated?
3.
That is correct. 63. Okay. Dave, one of the ancient world wonders of the Hanging Gardens was found in which city?
Babylon.
That's true. I can't hear you on your microphone. You said Babylon, right?
That is correct.
I still cannot hear you.
He said he's right.
Okay, that got you. Okay, Jeff. Let's do this. How many days was Harrison president of the United States?
About 40. He was about 40, I believe.
What do you say, Dave?
30.
I can't hear you at all. I'm so sorry. Something's
30.
up with that.
30.
30. It was 32. It was 32. Okay. Dave, in 1927, who became the first man to solo and nonstop across the Atlantic? Don't be looking on your phone.
Lindbergh.
That's correct. That's correct. I'm sorry, folks. We got a problem with Dave. Okay. Jeff, if you know this will be good here. Which U.S. president had a home called the Hermitage? Is that right?
Yes.
That's Jefferson, I believe. No. That is Jackson, I think.
That's correct. That's Jackson. That is correct. Dave,
Yes.
what famous battle took place on Sunday, June 18th, 1815?
You got me.
Okay, Jeff.
15, we took a little trip along along Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi, Battle of New Orleans.
Jeff, you're good. Okay.
It was actually fought 2 weeks after the war was over.
It was. Wow. Okay. Here we go. Whose turn is it to ask? Jeff, how many U.S. presidents have been assassinated?
Okay. Kennedy. McKinley. I knew this one time. Lincoln. I believe there's 4.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, now I can hear you, Dave.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
I'm not doing my own parts.
You can
All
go ahead
right.
and ask me, Dave.
Okay, you ready? Here we
Yeah.
go. Who was shot outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington?
Ronald
Which
Reagan.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. We'll just do a couple more here. Jeff, who was the first man to walk on the moon and what year was that?
Neil Armstrong, 1969.
Very good. Do you teach about that?
A little bit.
Do
Little bit.
people care? Do the kids care about the moon and all that? No.
No, they don't care anything about their TikToks right now.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. Let's do who invented the cotton gin, Dave?
Eli Whitney.
Very good. All right, he's doing pretty good. And what year, Jeff, did the War of 1812 end?
1815.
That's correct. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to go through this a little bit more here. Okay. What was the name of the first car ever made?
Betsy. No, I don't know.
No idea.
The motor wagon. The motor wagon. Okay. Jeff, which war took place between 1950 and 1953? That is correct. Let's see. Dave, in what year was the first Super Bowl played?
1966.
Oh, you're so close.
67?
67.
Season. Oh, wait, now, okay, now you want I can tell you, this is a trick, this is a party trick I have. I can tell you the score, the two teams that played, and the quarterbacks and the numbers they wore for each Super Bowl.
Wow.
Wow.
Wasn't it Kansas City and Green Bay?
Yes, it was.
So I thought.
But it was 67, 66 season. If you're talking the year, so like just throw
I'll
out
give Dave a point.
throw out a year from 1967 to 2000, and I'll show you. Just throw out 1 year.
Okay.
Give me a year.
1983.
Okay, 1983. That Super Bowl was Washington 27, Miami 17. It was the strike shortened year of 82. Joe Theismann wore number 7, and David Woodley started the game. Don Strock wearing number 16. Don Strock came in wearing number 10. Joe Gibbs was the Redskins coach, and Shula was the Dolphins coach.
Jeff,
Wow.
we got to have you come back for some football trivia, man. Talk some football.
And Dave, don't give me a hard time about my movie knowledge.
Oh, yeah, I know. Hey, Jeff, why don't you okay, first of all, Jeff, you're way in the lead, and that makes me feel really good. So that's good. Why don't you tell the people you played in the Shrine Bowl, which tell us what that is, and tell us some of the players that you played with. Dave, you're going to enjoy this here.
I was lucky enough to get chosen to the Shrine Bowl, which is an all-star game between the North and the South. The Highway 30 divides the state. If the town is on Highway 30, you play for the South, except for Cedar Rapids, which plays with the North. I didn't play very much. I wasn't as good as the other guy, which is fine. But in 1989, the opposing quarterback was Kurt Warner.
Huh.
He threw a 35-yard pass over my head the third play of the game. I used to feel real bad about it, not anymore.
No.
Also on the line that year for the North was Adam Timmerman, who played, I believe, in South Dakota or Augustana, one of those two. But he has 2 Super Bowl rings, one for the Packers and one for the Rams. And also on that team was Trev Alberts, who won the Buckus Award for Nebraska, is now the AD at Nebraska. And on my team was Dana Holgerson, who was the coach at West Virginia for a while now, is at Houston. And he was a tool. I'm still trying to figure out how that happened. I do know how it happened because he's from Mount Pleasant. He washed out at Iowa, went to Wesleyan when Mummy and Mike Leach were there. And so he hitched onto those guys.
See, so there's some football history right there.
It was a great experience because they treated you like a king for about 10 days. It was a lot of fun.
That's good.
I was really sad last year or this past summer because my nephew made it to the Shrine Bowl and they didn't get to play.
Oh,
because of the vid. My sister Michelle's. Well, I'm gonna back up. No, he didn't get to play in 2020, and they played the 2021 game, but they didn't play in 2020, and it was too bad because Tanner deserved it. He was a good football player.
By the way, you won, Jeff, 14-9. Hey,
Well, good job.
as Jeff had mentioned, my Jeff's dad, my uncle Bob, died last March 2020. Right, March. I'm
March
trying to
16th, first day of the
16.
COVID break.
Yeah, he was struggling with it's some kind of nerve disease, right?
Yeah, he had a muscle wasting disease where he was losing muscle tone and couldn't grip anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want my dad still around because we were tight. You know, I've numerous times I've like I should call. Oh wait a minute, I can't. Be a long distance phone call.
Yeah.
But if Dad would still be alive, it probably wouldn't be very good for him because he probably was headed to a wheelchair within the next couple of years.
Yeah. Dave lost his dad last year, and John was 93.
91.
91. And I know that you've told me, Jeff, that it's been, it was a struggle there. And so you started to kind of take that, struggle and turn it into a passion for what, just tell us kind of in closing here, what you do.
Well, okay. What had happened, I was starting to go down a wrong road where I was depressed, and it was really hard because nobody really close to me has ever passed before. Because my grandparents passed, but Dave had a much different relationship with Grandma Martin than I did because I never saw her but once or twice a year. Well, I didn't know what to do, so I'm talking to one of my friends, and we're talking about football helmets because we played together at Simpson. And she said, "Man, I'd like to have an Ohio State helmet." And so I'm just going to make one. So I made one. Well, I thought this is kind of fun. Hold on for a second. So I decided I'm going to make helmets. So
Nice.
we have now made, my wife and I have now made since March of 2020, over 350 helmets.
Wow.
My wife has a silhouette machine where she cuts the decals. These actually were Iowa State decals that I picked up, but my wife is a genius at it, and we can make about anything. It's been really neat because what happened is I was making them, and my wife said, "You know what, you need to start selling some of these." So probably about 20 into it, I started selling them for 25 a piece. Don't tell the copyright people. But then, or just say it's a donation to me. But what happens is I found out that I love doing it, and I did it in my garage. I just kind of walked around. But now my father-in-law apparently had to have something to do too last November, so he built me a room with a turntable and things like that.
Nice.
And so I'll go to different coaches I know and pick up helmets. Like I've been to Alden, Iowa about 3 times and gotten about a load of about 100 helmets, about 50, 60 helmets. Just got one one from West Burlington of about 50 that were rejected because helmets only have a 10-year life in most cases. And after that, they have to be thrown away. They can't be sold. So I take them and rip them up and take something that's going to the garbage and try and make something that's nice. And what's really neat about it is how people react to them. One of the first ones we did, and what really hooked me is back in the summer of 2020, I made a Nebraska helmet for the Sigourney Kyoto guy, who's a friend of mine, and on his website or his Facebook feed was a guy, one of his players, and he wanted a helmet from when his dad played at Sigourney back in 1979. So we found a picture and copied it. He saw it, and I met him in Washington. He came running to me with his money, took it like this, and just the joy that people get from it is great because it's something that you can go buy a Chicago Bears helmet for $150, whatever you want, but I've made 8 or 9 of them, and just to see people how they like them. And I just had one where I made a Montana helmet because I like them. I look at helmets and go, I like that helmet. I'm gonna make it. And one of the West Burlington coach saw it on Facebook and asked me because that one was spoken for. So I made another one, and he gave it to his dad, who graduated in 1979 from Montana. Hadn't been back there since. And he said he started crying. So I'm like,
That's
know what?
cool.
That's why we do it, and it's a lot of fun. I get pretty dirty, and we made some decent money, so that's good.
Well, that's wonderful. I've been there and I have some of those helmets, and I just want to thank you, Jeff, for being with us tonight. This was great. I really enjoyed talking with you, and not only that you're my cousin, but you're a smart guy as well. And so I appreciate that, Jeff, and we just thank you for coming on.
No problem. Anytime.
Yeah, we thank you. We want to thank Andy and all of our listeners for being with us during this episode. Please don't forget to comment and share this podcast with your friends. And hey, why don't you message us on our Two Daves podcast Facebook or Instagram page, and we'd be happy to talk with you.
And until next time, help us increase our podcasting viewership. And we look forward to doing this once again. And always remember that 2 Daves are always better than one.
Yeah.